and we're going to dive straight in because I really want to make sure that we get as much information in the short period of time that I have you. So let's just start with some background and just going into the introductions and giving people a little bit of who you are. Because when I think of the Singletons, I think of one word, and that's humble. And if anyone who has read your resume, your bio, if they were listening earlier, then they heard exactly why I say that. Your background is just extremely impressive. But how did you start? What was your upbringing like?
Well, if you hear Singleton, you should think of the word Julie. So that's that's by far the most important Singleton. So it's I grew up in Fayette County. Didn't really have a remarkable childhood by any stretch of imagination. Come from a broken home, so my mom and dad got divorced when I was very young. And I remember when my mom ended up moving to Alabama with my sister. My sister was my whole world. So if you know, kind of, she's 2 years, 4 months, and 2 days older than me. But she was my whole world growing up. And so actually, believe it or not, I remember her leaving more than my parents' divorce had a bigger impact on me. But anyway, my mom and sister moved to Alabama, and I lived in my dad's twin sister's basement in Peachtree City, going into 8th grade and 9th grade. And I remember we ended up moving. We got to move to a really nice 1-bedroom apartment. So kind of the timeline for you guys, it was right when the financial crisis happened in the late 90s, and his business wasn't doing well, and he was a private home builder. And so it was a tough time. I met my wife, Julie, who I know you know. We met in middle school at Grace Evangelical Church on Flat Creek Trail. I was a super popular middle school kid because I played guitar and sang in the church choir. Like I was I love the Passion series, and I love playing music. And I was good enough for church, but nothing else. I was in choir, and we met in middle school, and then we didn't really start dating until high school. She was homeschooled, and it was tough to be able to get to date her. I had to work really hard to be able to get to date her. And we've been married 21 years now. I think her parents finally will let me date her if I were to ask her out. I think I'd finally get to. But it's just, I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to serve people. Like my whole life, all I wanted to do is take care of people and serve those around me. So I went to Georgia State. I was pre-med at Georgia State, and that's when 9/11 happened. And as you know, I mean, I know your husband served too, and it was a switch flipped in me, and I felt like God was calling me to come serve in the service, which I was the guy that I turned down. I played all sorts of sports in high school. I lettered, I think, 7 or 8 times, but I had no desire to be military. It just wasn't for me. I had a lot of family members that were military, a grandfather and uncles, and it just wasn't the life for me. And then 9/11 happened, and so I felt compelled, and I joined on September 20th, and only wanted to do a couple years of service. And Julie and I woke up one day, and we've been in 15 years, and we had 4 kids, and we've been all over the world, and decided to move home. And I really wanted to see my oldest graduate high school and get to know him a little bit before he graduated high school, because not every time period in the service is the same. I had a good friend, Kevin Palmer, is a good friend of mine. He deployed once in his 20 years of service. And it was at the end of his career, but I joined right after 9/11. So we were deployed constantly and gone all the time. And I remember there's like a 7-year period there. I was only home about 180 days between one of the deployments. It was like 365. So it was hard on the family. And then started flying for the airlines, and just God kept calling me to serve. I didn't feel like, neither Julie or I felt like we were done serving. And so we decided, for some reason, we felt called to the political field. We felt like it was genuinely lacked people that just had the courage of their convictions and the ability to tell the truth all the time. And there was a lot of ambition involved. And while Julie and I have certainly jumped through every open door, I wouldn't say it's been from ambition. It's from a desire to serve. And so we did. And a lot of the rest of the story, and I'm sure some of your viewers know some more. It was tumultuous, to say the least. It was not an easy path. Constantly the underdog, constantly running against the power of incumbency, and everybody and their brother supporting the other candidate.
Okay. Mm.
And we just, we never let it get to us. We never let it hurt our feelings. We still run into people today that are like, oh, I'm sorry I supported your opponent in this race. I was like, so did everybody. Like, it's fine. Okay.
I understand.
Yeah, right. It's personal, right? So it's like, and people think that you're going to harbor feelings. You're like, I don't. Like, I was serving God. I wasn't serving you. So it doesn't hurt my feelings that, and so that's just been our experience. And then the last year has been amazing. Working up in Washington as Chief of Staff has been kind of a dream job for me. I've really enjoyed. I love to dig into the policy and the how to make a difference. I tell people about all the bills I passed as a lame duck House member in Georgia. Lame duck, I wasn't going to run for reelection. The speaker didn't like me very much. He actively drew me out of my district, and we still got a ton done. And people are like, I don't know how you got all that done. Well, it's because we didn't care about credit. We just wanted to get stuff done. And as a chief in Washington, that's been my experience so far too. It's like,
don't skip ahead. Don't skip ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to skip ahead. So that's kind of my history and my background in a nutshell. We've been blessed. All of our kids are happy and healthy. Our oldest is at Liberty University now. He's an aviation major, and then we have 2 in high school and 1 in middle school. And it's our youngest is a daughter. So we joke that we kept trying until we got it right, and we finally got a girl.
I love it.
And she rules the roost. So next to Julie, she's probably second in command. But it's a great time.
Awesome. Yes, I didn't want you to skip ahead because I really want to take some time and dive into your congressional space. I can't remember the person who said this. And if you're listening and you're watching and you remember, shoot over to allthingsjking.com and drop it in Tuss Talks or in the comment section on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe and like while you're watching. That being said, there was a quote that was Mike Pence said one time before, and it was that duty is ours and results is the Lord's. And I think that's when you go into politics thinking about it from that perspective, it absolutely changes things, and it causes you to walk in there knowing that the results is not up to you. So just do your job. So I understand that more than you know as well.
Yeah, you do.
Okay. Was there like a milestone or something you experienced during your political journey that really, or just in your life, that really shaped your political beliefs?
My political beliefs that's a great question. I would say no. I mean, it all boils down to my faith. And there wasn't really a synergy between my political beliefs and my faith till I got out of the Army. I mean, believe it or not, I was non-political as a soldier, and I felt it was important. I remember, old stories about Eisenhower and our World War II generals that were so famously nonpartisan and famously non-political. And so I always kind of told myself that's why I was going to follow the same path. The irony is, I didn't really need to. I mean, nobody cares about how Philip Singleton was going to vote as an Army major. So I didn't have the same impact as the generals would. But really just faith. I mean, we'll talk about it later, I'm sure. But politically, I've had definitely some canon moments, if you will, some things that have really shaped my view on the strategy behind legislation and how to get things done. But my last couple of years in Korea, I think, were very formative for me because, I was the brigade XO for the largest combat aviation brigade in the world. I worked for a guy who's a 2-star general now, named Hank Taylor. He was a great boss, 06 brigade commander. And just my experience between what was happening on the ground in Korea and the amount of time we were spending on the DMZ and doing exercises over water to counter KJU just significantly didn't match the rhetoric that was coming out of Washington on what was happening in the Korean AOR and the area of responsibility. And it was kind of the first time that I really realized, like, it wasn't a moment. It's like, I don't have that moment of, I remember the moment I realized that Jesus was Savior. It's like, it was a progression, but there was definitely a realization during that last 2 years that that liberty and the freedom of the American people is not really at risk from foreign adversaries. but it is absolutely under attack by our own people from within. And I had that realization, and that's when I kind of decided, Julie and I prayed about it, and we decided that I want to make sure that I'm fighting the right battle. God's given us tools and the ability to fight, and I don't want to spend a single bit of my time, treasure, or talent fighting the wrong fight. I want to fight the right fight.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I actually really like that, because I think you can get caught up in doing so many other things, and then you don't realize that this is not what God really wanted you to do in the first place, right? You're just kind of busy. That's funny. Joyce Myers used to say, "Don't be a rocking chair," where you're constantly moving and never going anywhere. So, but currently you serve as Chief of Staff to Congressman Rich McCormick. Could you share some of the insights and just some of the policy perspectives that you're currently working on in Washington that's kind of dear to you?
Sure. I mean, first I'll share kind of the being a chief of staff is a different animal. And it's one of the things that it's actually hard for a lot of members up here because there are chiefs, I call it chiefs gone wild. So there are a lot of chiefs of staff in Washington that think it's about them and that it's about their policy objectives, and that the member is just there to get them, to get reelected so that they have authority. And I would never say their names out loud because I don't think the Republican Party should eat their own. But there are plenty of members in our party that the member is just focused on non-substantial things, and their chiefs have a lot of the legislative, they're pulling all the legislative strings. That's not Dr. McCormick. So it's one of the things I love about him, but it's also one of the things why I'm running for Congress myself, which we'll get to later. But a chief's job is to take the vision of the member and find a way to make it happen. And especially when you have a member like Dr. McCormick, he's not content to go stand behind the podium and say a bunch of platitudes and get a bunch of applause and then go home. He's the opposite. I mean, he's certainly good at the cameras, but he could care less if he gets accolades. He wants to get stuff done. He wants to achieve an objective. In Washington, you almost always, if you want to achieve something, you almost always got to be quiet about it. The second you start talking about it and self-promotion, somebody's going to want to oppose it. And actually, it's funny because in the political landscape we have today, sometimes being able to defeat someone else's objective is almost as politically advantageous as accomplishing that objective yourself. It's very tit for tat. It's very back and forth. So it's the quiet warriors like the Josh McKeens and the Rich McCormicks that are getting a lot of stuff done in Washington, despite not having the Senate and despite not having the White House, that unfortunately just their voters are never going to know how much they should appreciate them and their efforts because they're not public about it. It's got to be private. So that's an interesting dynamic in Washington for sure. And I know I didn't answer your question, but No,
we're going to get into just where you sit on other issues as well. And I wanted to throw this question in there because for people who don't know, what is the role of the chief of staff? What are you supposed to be doing and not supposed to be doing?
Yeah, so the chief of staff, so that I manage the entire office. So we have what's called an MRA, which is a member's representational allowance. It's essentially a stipend that the House gives to the member. And so I run the district office, which is down in Cumming, Georgia. And we have outreach people, we have caseworkers, we have a district director, a deputy district director, and that handles everything from funding requests for community service projects to a lot of casework. I mean, we do everything from your passport's expired and you need an emergency passport to your taxes were messed up and your refund is incorrect and we got to go help you fix that, or you need an agency to sign off. We've helped people with business transactions and sign off. If there's a federal agency involved, if there's a bureaucracy involved, then your congressional office is your liaison with that office. And for your listeners, use your congressional offices because we can get indoors you can't get in. It's wrong and it shouldn't work that way, but it does. And we can knock those barriers down. And then the DC office, we have a comm staff and we have a legislative team, and we have kind of an operations team. So I manage the whole budget. I do, the majority of the hiring, firing with the permission of the congressman, and we just manage the day in, day out operations. So everything from what are we going to message on, to what's the strategy to get this legislation passed, what's the timing for this bill, and then the difference between our office and some other offices is the direction. Leadership in our office is the congressman. So he provides the purpose, direction, and motivation. So he says, I want to do this piece of legislation. I certainly will shut the door and give him my thoughts on it, especially if it's something that is contentious. But then when he makes a decision, it's no longer my job to tell him that he's wrong. It's my job, or that I disagree. It's my job to execute his vision and make it happen. And that's what a good chief of staff does.
No, that was perfect. I appreciate that. Now let's dive into a little bit some national politics and topics, but and then we're going to bring it back home in a little bit to talk about some stuff here in Georgia. But Laken Riley is the young woman who passed away recently. She was a nursing student who was a student at Augusta University, and she was 22 years old, and unfortunately her life was taken from her. She was found on the university campus here in Georgia, and evidence is pointing to an illegal migrant who apparently crossed the border and committed a crime in Texas, left there, went to New York, committed a crime in New York, left there, and now is in Georgia, and we have this situation here. So let's talk about immigration, because that right there, if that's not enough to get you upset, what are your thoughts on the border and in this particular story as a whole?
Well, I mean, it's a total disaster, but it's so I actually talked to a family member of Laken today. So my boss talked to her family this weekend, but I talked to I was just talking to people from my district in the Georgia 3rd District, and just happened to talk to someone that was a relative. I think he was an uncle, or I don't remember, but just a really sad story. How we just talked about how it impacted his family, and how dramatic it was for them, and frankly, just terribly unexpected. But what's unique about the tragedy is the feelings of betrayal that they have. So it's not just the tragedy; this was caused by my own people that are supposed to care and take care of us. And that's how they feel about the Biden administration. And frankly, I think that's how most Americans feel about the Biden administration. It's a wanton ignoring of federal law, and putting people at risk on purpose for political gain. So frankly, it just makes me sick. We passed HR 2 over a year ago. It's a good border provision that does stuff like remain in Mexico and fixes the asylum rules. And the Democrats just don't want to do it. They have zero desire to fix things. And Janelle, it's all about electoral politics, and it's an open secret in Washington. Like, they don't even really hide it anymore. Some municipalities allow illegals to vote, like San Francisco and some other ones, but that's not what it's really about. What it's really about is, 7 million illegal aliens flooding to Democrat locations that have tons of handouts. That they count those in the census. That's 10 congressional seats. 10 congressional seats because of 7 million illegal aliens. Wow. So what they're playing the long game. They want the next census to come out. They're fighting right now in the House a provision to prevent them from being counted in the census, because we caught on to what their long game is. But their long game has nothing to do with taking care of America. It's all about power, and it always is with the left. But to talk about the Laken Riley incident, I mean, I'll let you get your 2 cents in too, but we got to bring it back to local level too, because it's very easy to blame Biden because he's so clearly inept. We have some fault too. Like the Georgia legislature, we knew this was a problem. We knew in 2019 that Athens, Clarke County and Fulton County and DeKalb County, and that there were local sheriffs that were ignoring ICE detainer requests, which, for the people listening, you don't just get an ICE detainer request because you're an illegal alien. You get an ICE detainer request because you've committed a crime and fled prior to standing your court case, or you've been convicted and fled. So these are criminals that are flagged by ICE. And we knew in 2019 that Athens-Clarke County is one of the worst ones, that as soon as they were running it through the system and this individual was popping up as being flagged with a detainer request, they were immediately letting them go because they wanted to be pro-immigrant. Well, first of all, you know who that hurts the most is the legal immigrant population.
Yes.
Because communities tend to stick together. And so if you're if you're of Spanish descent, you tend to live and reside and work in areas with other people of Spanish descent. Well, they don't want criminals released into their society because it makes it less safe for them. And those criminals continue to perpetuate crimes, but they're not doing crimes over in the sheriff's nice neighborhood on the other side of town. They're doing crimes in the immigrant community. And so they just didn't care. And that's, we had a chance to fix it. I had a bill 915, I think House Bill 915 back in 2020. That was about 5 pages, but it specifically addressed the illegal detainer request. It specifically addressed the situation that caused what happened to Miss Riley. And we did, I got a lot of co-sponsors, but we didn't do anything in the legislature to pass it. And now they're working on legislation that I worry they're gonna pass something in the state legislature this year, and they'll probably attach her name to it. But it would be really disappointing if they didn't actually address the issue that we're talking about, and they pass some feel-good measure that maybe addresses an issue but not the issue.
I feel like you might be talking about the border bill that recently was killed. And I really feel like Democrats are trying to hijack this conversation. I mean, we all know that they were not on board with securing the border for a majority of Biden's term. But that being said, they're now, I saw an article that read, Republicans kill the border bill. And I feel like that's how you start to shape these narratives. So should we have passed something, even if it wasn't what we thought it should have been, if it wasn't the best? Or okay, all right.
No. The Senate bill was absolutely ridiculous. It codified into law. It actually created precedent that actually reduced executive power, which is ironic, because normally I love that. Like, let's get rid of as much executive power as we possibly can, because we have a way too powerful executive. But the executive power is powerful right now because Article 1, which is the United States Congress is ignoring their Article 1 responsibilities, like, passing a balanced budget. But don't get me started on that. But no, the Senate bill was horrible because it essentially created a precedent, up to 5,000 illegal immigrants a day no longer would classify as an emergency and something that the president could respond to, which is insanity. So what they were doing is they were trying to pass legislation that would empower illegal immigration, not solve illegal immigration. And the House has already passed something. It's called HR 2. If I were Mike Johnson, and I'm not, and I wouldn't wish being the speaker on my worst enemy, because I think Mike Johnson is a good man in a very difficult position. But I would send the House home. I would say the House is going home. We will not reconvene until HR 2 is signed by Joe Biden.
So, we're living in this 2024 election cycle. It's a little crazy. It's actually crazier than ever. At least that's how it feels. And I believe personally that the new swing voters are going to be the individuals who are not supporting Trump or Biden, right? So I think it's the people who are voting for the other primary candidates. I saw a recent poll that showed that Trump was polling at about 56% with independents. So that leads me to believe that the reason why there's such a tight polling between Biden and Trump nationally is because we have not accounted for the many people that want neither one of them. And so what should be the party's focus as it relates to unifying? And what I mean is, after these primaries, we look at Nikki Haley, a lot of her supporters are really upset about how things are handled and trying to push her out, and vice versa from Trump supporters as it relates to Nikki. But we can't win a general without both groups. So what's your message, and what do you think should be the message to the general to unify us as we go into this election cycle?
Yeah, it's an interesting question that I think we need 7 or 8 hours to try to discuss it. And we need my wife and your husband too, because they've got great insight on it too. But the conundrum is, so Trump has created this populist movement, and he's a populist president, and so he's also going to be the Republican nominee. And Trump was going to be a much better president than Joe Biden has been. But you run into the conundrum now where the Republican Party has never been a party that has been led by a personality. They think about it. How do you go from Bush to Romney to McCain? Like, they're so wildly different as people, and the Republican Party has never been a personality dominated party. We're a principles dominated party. But now we have a leader that's a populist, and so he's the head of the party. But his views on certain issues continue to change and evolve and change over time, and so it's not principle driven; it's populist driven, and so it just puts the party in a weird. It puts us in an interesting dynamic because hate is more powerful than love in politics, and unfortunately, you see so many people. I mean, you can make the argument that the reason Donald Trump won the presidency in 2016 was the hate for Hillary Clinton was really a factor, especially amongst independents.
Right.
And now you see the dislike for Trump amongst certain factions. It puts us in a weird spot. But here's what I think the remedy is, Janelle, is also, I have another tangent too. There's always an establishment. And everyone likes to use words like rhino and establishment. And they use these terms that really don't mean anything, that everyone gets to define themselves. But as a candidate, I can tell you, it's like the establishment's not always where you think it is. Sometimes it's people you thought were your friends. But if they're not, if the establishment is the people that want to exert their will over everybody else, despite what's best for the country or what principles lead you to, that's what the establishment is. And it's everywhere. So you got to fight for those people, those individuals like yourself, like me. They're individuals like Dr. McCormick that are out there like, this is what I believe. This is why I believe it. And this is why I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And stop attacking other people.
Yeah.
Like, what King does, what you decide to do, that doesn't change who I am or what I want to do. Right. And I'm not threatened when Janelle King comes and says, hey, I disagree with Philip on this thing. I think we should do this, and here's the reason why. That doesn't threaten me because we should be bigger than that. And it's like, my principles are the way I am. And we've lost Ronald Reagan. We've lost the statesmanship of our party, which says it's not about a populist movement. And I believe you can support Donald Trump over Joe Biden for president and also be a principle first person. And there are too many people in the independent realm and in the Republican Party realm, like a lot of the Nikki Haley supporters, that think they cannot support Trump and be based on and make principled decisions. And I would argue I don't think that's true. I think you've got to find a way to be able to do both.
I could not think of a better way to say that. I thought you hit all the different angles in a very it's a genuine way. I think a lot of times we have this conversation around unifying. Somehow it always turns into more division because there's so many emotions involved and people are just not listening. But I think what you said was perfect. So now let's go into your campaign, right? Because we've done we've had an up close and personal perspective with you as far as it relates to Georgians, and we've had this conversation, and you have that. I mean, you've served the country in so many ways. So what's next for Philip?
Well, it's you said it earlier, actually, and I know you and your husband both believe this too. It's one of the reasons why you guys are some of our favorite people in the state, but especially Julie, she loves you guys. It's the end. I don't know what the end of the road looks like. All I know is God opens doors and we follow, and we pray every day that we're making the right decision. Because, I talked to my pastor about this. Like, I think God's calling me to do something. You feel called and you feel led, but it's not exactly a telegram message. There's no. I check my text messages, and I don't get a text that says this is what you need to do. So you just constantly pray that it's not, hubris or pride or you're not overzealous trying to serve and, that you're doing the right thing. But anyway, my congressman, retired or announced in December that he's retiring. Don't forget, I live south of Atlanta from the Noonan Coweta area, even though I work for a congressman in North Georgia. And so it's where I served in the state house.
Who's the congressman decided?
Drew Ferguson.
Drew Ferguson. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Georgia's 3rd Congressional District, Southwest, essentially we're the inverse of the 6th District, the 3rd District, Southwest of Atlanta. So he announced he's retiring. I felt like Julie and I prayed about it. Actually, Dr. McCormick was the first one that called and said, "Hey, Drew's retiring. That's your district. You should go run." And I'm like, "Are you trying to fire me? Is there something I need to know about? Like, am I not doing a good?" He's like, "No, you're the best chief in Washington." But he's like, "I'd rather have you in the foxhole beside me than behind me." And so, which meant a lot to me. Then Julie and I prayed about it, and we just decided that, it's an interesting time. The timing seems like it was, very God Spirit led. I'm in a unique position where I just recently left the legislature. So actually last January, I didn't leave on my own accord. I got drawn out by the Speaker of the House, 234 districts. I was the only incumbent Republican drawn out for having the crazy idea of, promoting Save Girls Sports and, and demanding balanced budgets. And, nothing I voted for or sponsored ever was outside of the party platform. So it's just kind of baffling what I would go and I would tell the former speaker all the time, it's like, I am not your enemy. It was a very one-way battle. It's like, I am fighting for the things that I promised people that I was going to fight for when they voted for me. So anyway, we just felt like we could make a difference. The district is very conservative. It's a 75% Republican district. I'm the only one in the race that's spent any time in Washington, D.C. And frankly, as a chief of staff, I have a unique perspective on how to actually accomplish the mission, get things done. So I think some of the best members we've ever had, Rob Woodall is another example I can think of that came from a chief of staff job. And you're just instantly ready to do the job and get things done. And man, we desperately need people today in Congress that have the principles, but also have the strategy and the ability to actually achieve results. Because a lot of times what you find is that there's a lot of people that want to stand at a podium and yell in a microphone and say all the things they're against and how bad Joe Biden is and how bad the border is and how bad the budget is. And then you ask them, well, how are you going to solve that? They don't even know that there's 12 appropriations bills. They have no idea what the budget process is. Yeah, they could say what our top lines are. So it's like, it's just rhetoric. And we're in a unique position where I think we have the ability to actually get things done. And so the results are not on me. That's on the voters in Georgia's 3rd, but we're going to run, and it's going great so far. We got about 85 days till the primary. So whoever wins the primary is going to win the race.
How many primary candidates do you have?
There were 6. I think 1 dropped out, so now there's 5.
Okay.
But qualifying is next week. So, or I don't know when you air your show, but qualifying is the 4th through the 8th. So we'll know by the 8th what the field looks like.
Okay, perfect.
But the field is pretty set, Janelle. I mean, once qualifying is over, it's like 70 days.
Yeah.
So that's not a lot of time.
No, not at all. Not at all. And what are some key platform items that you are associating with your campaign?
Well, the biggest thing I talk about is the budget. The budget's the most important thing. And, I get annoyed because some people think it's cliche, but it's not. Like, everything in Washington is about funding. If you want to fight DEI, you have to fight it through the budget process. If you want to fight against censorship, you have to fight it in the budget process. If you want to fight the southern border, it's not a budget problem, but it's a budget process problem. And so you have to fight DHS, you have to fight Mayorkas through the budget. And so the budget is absolutely the number one issue. Our debt servicing is over $1 trillion a year. We're less than a decade and a half away from the federal revenue not being enough to pay our debt bills. That has nothing to do with running the government. That's just our bills. And that should be terrifying to all of you guys because, nobody can run their household that way.
Yes.
So anyway, I joke that the budget and debt is my first, second, and third issue. It really is that important, but there are other things I care about. Veteran services are a big one for me. It's something I worked on at the State House a lot. I don't like this. There's a lot of rules that we can change very easily to make it better for veterans. Like currently, you've got the 1 hour, 100-mile rule. It doesn't make any sense. Like if you're not getting good service at your veteran healthcare facility, you should be able to go in the economy and the VA pay for it. By the way, secret, it's actually much cheaper if you go into the private market than if you go through the VA.
Mm-hmm.
But, the left likes to pretend the VA is some model of the perfect socialized healthcare system, but it's terrible and it's actually very inefficient.
Right.
So some of those things are things that I would work on.
I love that. I love that. I totally agree with you when it comes to the particularly veteran services and the VA hospital. Both Kelvin and our son are also veterans, so we understand the 45-day, like the 45-day wait to get an appointment and such. So hopefully we can get that together. You mentioned
we have some. I'm sorry, I just want to add, like we have, because a lot of your viewers probably don't know this, your listeners don't. Like we have some VA healthcare facilities that cost more than major municipal hospitals, and 90% of all of their services are passed through. In other words, 90% of the people that walk into the clinic don't get a single service from the clinic. They go to the clinic, they waste time in triage services, and they get referred out to private doctors anyway because that clinic doesn't have that specialty or whatever. Wow. That's a massive bureaucratic overhead that just costs taxpayers a ton of money and hurts healthcare outcomes for patients. And it's just like common sense. You and I, it takes us 5 seconds to know that that's a bad idea.
Right.
We need Congress people that are up here like, hey, this is a bad idea. Okay, what's the next step? Fix it. Well, right. I mean, it seems like a no-brainer.
Well, you sponsored a couple of bills that were emotionally charged, the Save Girls Sports, Constitutional Carry, the Anti-Sanctuary City Act. All of these topics have such a emotional angle to it, and you kind of need that in order to persuade people to really grasp the nature of the bills. So how has pushing these type of bills affect you as an individual and as a candidate?
Well, it's been the hardest part of being a representative for me. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm actually I'm actually sensitive, Janelle. I actually have feelings, despite what I think. No, so it's like Save Girl Sports is a great one, right? 2019, you could see the writing on the wall, and I was an Army strategist, and so I just went to leadership, and I was like, hey, this is going to be a big issue in 4 years. But we can solve it today and have almost no pushback. We have a supermajority in the House, supermajority in the Senate, and we have a Republican governor who supports it. So let's pass this now, and let's never have to worry about that headline of that transgender boy that beat this girl in high school sports and in Eastern Georgia, and all of a sudden it's a big problem. Right. And they all told me, Philip, it's a solution without a problem. And I said, you guys are just wrong. Like, you're just wrong. We need to do this. We need to do it now. And so that's the kind of stuff I push for. And I got very crosswise with leadership because I wouldn't back down. And I just had to tell them every day. I was like, I told my voters when I ran for office that this was an issue I was going to solve. Constitutional carry is another one. It's like, we all seen all the big ads from some of these statewide candidates that's like, oh, I'm going to solve this issue. I'm going to deport everyone on my bus, or I'm going to put it on my pickup truck. And then they get into office and they don't do anything on the subject. And I'm just like, I refuse to be that kind of person. And so just everything I said I would do on the campaign trail, so a lot of members and some other people I'm running against, they'll take these token issues and they'll be like, yes, I voted for something. Well, that's a cop-out. Like, what did you write? What did you co-sponsor? What did you go present in committee? What did you put on your Facebook page and your website? Like, what did you actually do to achieve this besides sitting back and letting people like me do all the work, and then you try to take a vote at the last minute knowing it's going to fail to try to save your political career? And it's like, we just don't need more legislators like that. And so that was my experience in the state house. And honestly, I was talking to Julie about this the other day. We went to Atlanta, we went to the train depot to event down there. And I kind of just had really, I didn't have great feelings walking through the Capitol because, I realized that it really hurt my feelings the way I was treated so poorly by my own party for just doing things that every one of them turned around when they walked out of that building and campaigned on the issues that I was fighting for. It just feels like betrayal from your own, it's like a circular firing squad. And so formative for me, what it's done for me, Janelle, is you will never hear me talk bad about another Republican. It'll be very seldom that you hear me talk bad about a Democrat. I attack policy. I will support good policy and I will attack bad policy. But what it's done is, it has fortified me into someone that, I've been on the House floor and I have literally been the only no with 176 yeses, and walked out of there and the press say, well, why'd you vote no? I say, well, I voted for this reason and this reason, this reason. Say, well, why does so-and-so? And I'm like, you have to talk to them about why they chose to vote the way they did. But I told, and I would point to the policy. It's like, we believe in no taxes. We believe in limited taxes and reducing the size of government. So being the only no vote on a marketplace facilitator tax, like there was a new tax. And we say that we're the party of reducing taxes, not increasing them. So I voted no on it. And what it's done is it's insulated me. And, now I know that voters know, when they look me in the eye and they ask my opinion, I'm going to tell them what I think on something. And they know I'm telling them the truth. And they know that there's no mechanism or lever you can pull to get me to do something that I feel is not the right thing to do.
I love it. I love it. Well, okay. So we got past the deep questions. So we're going to go and have some fun. I have 4 quick fire questions. So quick fire, you cannot provide an explanation. So you just have to give one or the other.
It's going to go terribly.
I know. Okay. Number 1, would you rather have the power to unilaterally pass one major policy of your choice or successfully collaborate with the opposing party on multiple small policies? So to condense that, would you rather pass one major policy or would you want to collaborate on a bunch of policies?
One major policy, balanced budget amendment.
Got it. Would you rather have dinner with a past president or a past chief of staff? Chief of staff.
Chief staff.
And if you had a professional sidekick, would you rather have that person or that assistant be telepathic, where they know all of your thoughts and you don't have to share them anymore? Or would you rather they be shape-shifting and there's someone who can seamlessly adapt in any role or environment?
Ooh, I'm going to go with shape-shifting, but that's because my wife, I'm pretty sure, is telepathic. So it would give me both.
I love that. Okay, last one. In the realm of multitasking, would you rather be an expert at juggling numerous projects simultaneously or have a superhuman ability to hyper-focus on one task at a time with unparalleled efficiency?
Multitask.
That's me too. Well, this is great. And I would love to just leave the floor to you right now and just, share any last comments, remarks, or anything I missed that you want us to know about you or what you're working on or anything else.
Thanks. I mean, it's been a great conversation. We could do this all day. I'm sure we probably went like 45 minutes or an hour over time because we could talk all day.
I know.
No, I just for the people that are listening, Janelle's amazing. You guys have all probably been fans like I have for a long time, but I guess I don't have a political message. I have a personal message. Our country is only ever one generation away from not being a free country anymore. And there's a lot of platitudes to talk about it, but you have the left right now is hell-bent on using every single lever of power, every mechanism under their control to take away the individual power of people and to destroy truth. They want you to think that marriages don't matter, that boys can be girls, they want to destroy anything that is truly defined by God and true. And they want to do that because that all increases their power. And there are good people on the left. I want to be clear. There are good, well-intentioned people. A lot of times they don't even know that that's what they're doing. and it's the system is designed to work against you. And then on the right, apathy is the enemy of liberty. And there's so many Republicans that are on the right that are apathetic to the enemy, and they don't know where the real enemy is. And a lot of times it's institutional. So that's the message for you guys is if you're willing to sit and listen to Janelle and Philip talk, then you got to get engaged. And everybody says that, but like seriously, like get engaged, like go run for office yourself. Go support a candidate, go knock doors for a candidate, make phone calls. The American people are largely asleep, especially the Christian right. The Christian right is so afraid to hurt someone's feelings that they're not telling them the truth.
Yeah.
And when you don't tell the truth, when you're allowed to put a shade over the lamp of God, then the light doesn't shine, and Satan wins. And so we just have to be willing to go out there and fight. And you don't have to be in politics to go out there and make a difference and share with people. And so that's my plea, because somewhere out there, there's somebody out there is a Philip Singleton or a Julie Singleton or a Janelle King, and they haven't been engaged yet. They haven't flipped that switch. But I would tell you that the political field is the mission field of the next generation. Like that is where we need to be putting our ambassadors and our missionaries, because truth is losing in this country. And it's terrifying to know what we will be if we allow truth to die. And all it has to do is people just need to stop fighting for it, and it will die.
Man, that's powerful. What a great way to close this. A call to get engaged, a call to do more, to not don't just be a voter, even though your vote matters, and that's absolutely important. But you're right. Get on the field, get in the game. And I think that's a good way to end this. So thank you so much, Philip. I certainly appreciate it. We would love to have you back and do this again, particularly as we get closer to your race, or closer to the election day with your race. And just, so that people can hear more from you, and again, figure out ways to get engaged. So lastly, can you please share how our listeners can follow you, contact you, and all of that good stuff?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I would have gotten yelled at if I didn't. So Philip for Liberty is my Twitter, Philip for Liberty. My Facebook, it's just Philip Singleton. You can find me. I've got my, great picture with my blue suit and red tie on. I look very congressional. And then singletonforcongress.com. So it's www.singletonforcongress.com. And reach out and share your thoughts with me, guys. I mean, it's I'm running to serve the people. So, and in our race, the people are what matters the most, not the candidates. So reach out to me, touch base. And even if it's a question about what's going on in Congress right now, I'm happy to give you the tea, as my kids say. What's the tea? I'll give you what's really going on.
Oh man, I love that. That's what everyone says, right?
The tea with Janelle King.
Right. Well, thank you for spilling tea with us. And this has been so great. And I look forward to deeper and more conversations. So thank you.